Hello, I'm Alversink, the sole developer of Portal Foxes TD, which released on Steam about a month ago. It is my first Steam release and it did not go well. I'm going to talk about what I think went wrong, what I learned going through the process, and try to end on a positive note about what's next for World Fabric games. Portal Foxes TD is a tower defense game where you defend portals from slams with elemental foxes in tabletop-style virtual reality. It removes the typical levels and upgrades tower defense games usually have and favors a unique system of dynamic enemy pathing that requires building mazes with blocks in 3D. You do this via a unique control scheme that uses 3D 6 degree of freedom cursors. There's a 25-level story that unfolds from the apparently bright setting through lies and trauma to reveal a much darker, unique post-apocalyptic world. You may have noticed I said unique a bunch of times in there, and that is the first problem. A game doesn't control like you'd expect, it doesn't play like you'd expect, the story isn't what you'd expect based on how it looks, and the mechanics are a lot deeper and trickier to unravel than anyone seems to expect. I thought all the subversion was great to stand out, but it's impossible to market because it's not visible on the surface. The core game loop consists of trying to figure out how the enemies and tools you get even work, but it's a tower defense game, which are usually pretty easy and follow known tropes. I watched multiple playtesters who were good at tower defense games just Dunning-Kruger themselves face first into a wall because that past experience is useless in Portal Foxes. On top of that, it's a VR game that's designed to be a chill sit-down experience. Third person with limited realism. Learning the unique mechanics at the same time you're figuring out a completely unique control scheme was so overwhelming for some players that they didn't even realize the starting character is lying to their teeth to manipulate the others into helping on a recklessly dangerous made-up quest. It's a weird game. Which is fine. I like weird games. Lots of people do. But it's weird in a way that doesn't come through on the Steam page or in the emails to influencers. It's not a marketable game. And no amount of polish is going to change that. Let's talk about what polish could have changed. The second problem with Portal Foxes is that the graphics and sound just aren't that good. I took the stance on this game of doing absolutely everything myself. I did the modeling, the animation, the sound effects, composed the music, wrote the story, coded the game, built the levels, and coded the entire game engine from scratch in C++. Also made the trailers and the marketing materials. It was important to me for my own growth and budget to do it that way, but I'm just not as good of an artist as I am a coder. I literally learned to use Blender while making Portal Foxes. I used procedural animations on the foxes and procedural textures on the blocks to try to compensate with algorithms since that's my real specialty, but the UI panels and the slimes didn't get the same treatment. I didn't think people would care as much about the simple UI and enemies if the game played well, and that was very wrong. To most people, the game only looks as good as the ugliest thing in it. People say they care about mechanics more than graphics, but it's a lie. The reason we see so many good-looking games with bad mechanics and not the other way around is just survivorship bias. A game with good graphics and bad mechanics will get negative reviews, but a game with good mechanics and bad graphics will never be played. Could have made the UI panels look nicer, but I was already pretty burned out by the time I got to that problem. They could be fixed up in a patch, maybe. The enemies are tougher to fix, though. The slams contain a lot of diegetic information. That is, their visual appearance gives a lot of information that's relevant to the player's strategy. The enemy pathing is based on attachment to exposed ledges. The little feet on the slime show how they're climbing. It is really critical information if you want to stop them from doing that. They also have shrinking cores which show their health, and major elements of the story hinge on how the slimes don't look very slime-like. All of that could have been avoided up front if I had planned for a final graphical style early, but it's very hard to come in at the end to change it now. Keep in mind this is a VR game, so it needs to hold 90 FPS at 4K, so the miniature fluid simulations in each slime are kind of out of the question. Looking back now, I could probably blend a set of handmade animation to get something better, but I didn't have the animation skills when I started the project, and I built the animation blending tool for the engine during the project. But I'll have those for the next game. The last and certainly not least mistake I made for this project was making it a PC VR game. I was hype about VR and I built my engine specifically with VR in mind, and that's just what I wanted to do. I believe the virtual reality market right now is obsessed with realism and first person high intensity games, and I think a lot is being left on the table in terms of how virtual reality could enhance other genres. I see games like Civilization's VR port using those crappy laser pointers with fixed perspectives and completely wasting the VR controls, and I just wanted to show there was a better way. A more tactile, tactical experience, if you will. Anyway, making a game only playable by 2% of the market just to make a point is not a good strategy. It's terrible for sales, obviously, but it also made it really hard to find playtesters. I might have been able to get a clue on more of the issues in time if I had had access to more players earlier in the process. Next game will not be VR exclusive. Moving on. I'm pretty bummed out that Portal Foxes didn't do better. I thought even with all the issues I'd get some interest. But the influencers completely shut me out. My own social media post didn't move the needle. Well, let's end on a positive note. I never really expected it to blow up, so I didn't budget for it. Rob Fabric as a business is fine, and I can keep making games for the foreseeable future. Also, my skills and tools are miles ahead of where they were a year ago, so everything will be a lot easier next time around. So what is next for World Fabric? Well, I'm gonna try this devlog thing for a while and see how that goes. I think doing things more in the open can only help, finding playtesters or other developers and finding problems earlier. And I just like talking about what I'm working on. I built a system that automatically synchronizes running applications over the internet. That's what the World Fabric Engine is, so I'll be talking about that more for sure. It's sort of a virtual world application sandbox you can stitch threads of execution into. It's been named World Fabric. So expect future games to be multiplayer from the ground up, probably co-op because that's just what I like more. I've got a list of more than 20 game ideas, but the current leader is a shop simulator game and a fully simulated town economy. I also plan to move my rendering pipeline from OpenGL to Vulkan, so that could be content that people are interested in the gritty technical details. I hope you all tune back in and see what I'm up to. Like, subscribe, but like screw that bell. Like notifications, I just get in your head, mess with you.